The Monday, November 17, 2014 meeting of the Lake Forest City Council. Could I ask the clerk to call the roll, please?
Certainly. Honorable Mayor Schoenheider?
Here.
Alderman Waldeck?
Here.
Alderman Beidler?
Here.
Alderman Moore?
Here.
Alderman Pandeleon?
Here.
Alderman Tack?
Here.
Alderman Reisenberg?
Here.
Alderman Edelman?
Here.
Alderman Moreno?
Here.
Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Biddy, very much. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening. First item on the agenda this evening is reports of city officers. First item under there is comments by mayor. I only have one this evening, which is to invite everyone to join us at a really true Lake Forest holiday tradition, which is the lighting of our tree at Market Square next Friday, the 28th. I think it's around 5:30, but we hope you'll come sooner. Enjoy what I'm sure will be balmy weather, and some great rendition of seasonal music by the Lake Forest High School Choir and a really true community spirit event. So I hope you'll join us, and it's one of my favorite days of the year, no doubt. And those are my comments. Next item on the agenda, comments by City Manager. Bob Kiley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I have just one quick announcement for those of you that know our Director of Senior Resources, Marla Schachtel. She has announced that she will be retiring at the end of March. So we will be looking for a replacement. We will miss Marla. She's done an awful lot good things at the Senior Resource Center, and we're going to miss her, but hopefully we'll find a good replacement to take us forward over the next few years. So there will be, I'm sure, a party or two to thank Marla for all her hard work over the last 4 years, and we'll make sure that you're all invited. So with that, it completes my report for this evening.
Thanks, Bob, very much. We will certainly miss Marla a great deal. Next item on the agenda, council comments by council members. We do have a couple of items underneath here, but I'd like to go off agenda just a bit. I know we've got a couple of members who'd like to make some remarks. Kathy? Alderman Waldeck?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to mention something briefly. Last week, Alderman Beidler and I, along with Bob Kiley, Bob Ells, Chuck Myers, and Ellen Albus from District 67 met with some Ward 1 residents regarding the high school detention, or perhaps it's a retention pond. I'm not sure if we ever clarified which one it is.
Isn't it?
And
detention, isn't that what we finally discovered?
I think that's what we finally decided. It's been an issue that's been an issue in the ward for 6 months plus, and it was brought up at our town hall meeting, and we had a very productive meeting, and it was a great collaboration, I think, between city staff, the school district, the neighbors, and really came up with a great plan for moving forward and a timeline for moving forward, and we're hoping that something right now that's not looking so great is actually going to look pretty great down the road. And I think Prue and I might have secured invitations to their block party as well, which is supposed to be really amazing. So it was a very, very productive, worthwhile meeting. I really want to thank Bob, you and Chuck Myers and Bob Ells for helping us put it together and making the presentation to the neighbors. I think everyone left feeling a whole lot better than they felt coming in. So.
Great. Thanks, Alderman Waldeck. Alderman Beidler?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Another bit of news from Ward 1. Kathy Cerniak has asked that I remind everyone on the City Council. I think you probably already know about this, but you may not know that on Wednesday, November 19th at 6:30 here in City Hall, the Historic Preservation Commission will hear an introductory presentation on the replacement of the Woodbine Bridge. And I know we talked about that at a recent meeting, but this is the beginning of this project. This presentation is the first step in preparing for design work for the replacement bridge. To date, no design work has been completed on this project. The purpose of the Historic Preservation Commission meeting this week is to provide information and to get initial public input. The input from this meeting will guide the design work, which is expected to take approximately a year. As the design for the bridge moves forward, the Historic Preservation Commission will continue to be involved in the project, have the opportunity to review the design in progress at public meetings, and provide input along the way. Ultimately, the commission will be asked to grant approval of the final design. Bridge reconstruction could occur as early as 2016. The project is federally funded in part with the funds administered by the state with a 20% match from the city. There are some specific requirements that the bridge will be expected to meet. The goal will be to balance the state requirements with the community's character and historic nature of the Lake Road and Woodbine Lane neighborhood. Again, this is just the beginning of the process for this project. I encourage those interested to be informed and involved. And again, 6:30 this week, November 19th, here at City Hall. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Beider. Alderman Pandelon?
Just wanted to relay a little experience that I had yesterday, and there may be some other people here who shared that experience. I was minding my own business at Mass, 9 o'clock Mass at St. Mary's, and in the middle of the priest's homily, one of the elderly members of the congregation was taken ill, and after a brief pause, everything seemed to have been stabilized, and about 5 minutes later, the homily continued. 5 minutes later, 6 or 7 of our paramedics appeared on the scene with a policeman. They came into the church with absolute and total discretion. They very politely and civilly and again with great discretion managed to escort the parishioner out. I don't know where they took him after that. But the professionalism, the whole thing happened, the Mass went on, and there was virtually no disruption. And it was an incredibly professional job, and I just wanted to commend them for that.
Any other comments by the council?
One other, if I may, speaking of the paramedics, I just completed the Citizens Fire Academy class, and I have to say that I laud the fire department and the paramedics. They do a phenomenal job for us all, and it was a lot of fun and not as grueling as I feared, so that made me feel very good. But I learned a great deal, and I certainly recommend it to everyone. It's a very instructive way to learn about what our department does, both stations.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? If not, we'll move on. Next item on the agenda, Finance Committee, Gorton Community Center Rehabilitation Project Update and FY15 Budget Presentation, presented by Finance Committee Chairman George Pandelon, also Blair Nagel, Chairman, and Mark Ventling from the Gorton Community Center. George?
My presentation is going to come in the form of an introduction to Blair Nagel and Mark Ventling and Brenda Dick, who are going to make the presentation. So, please.
Blair, you're on.
Good evening. My name's Blair Nagel, as George said. I'm delighted to be here tonight with Stephen Wright of Wright Farima Architects to present our plans for Gorton's exciting transformation. I'm going to reflect first on the last 4 or 5 years, the recent past at Gorton, to give it a little bit of perspective as to how we got to this point. And then we'll review the renovation plans and the capital campaign status.
Blair, could I interrupt you for just a moment? There you go. Move the microphone up so everyone at home can hear you as well. Thank you.
But let me just start by saying Gorton's a very special place to me and my family. Long before Gorton was a community center, my father, Carl, was a student at Gorton when it was called Central School. He also worked with Brooks and Jackie Smith on founding Gorton in 1972. He helped work with them when they were transforming it from a school to a community center. So my family goes way back with Gorton. My children have attended the drop-in center, and my wife, who was very active on the drop-in center, was a big advocate for the drop-in center. So we love Gorton. My involvement started in 2010. I was asked to be on the board in 2010, then later the city asked me to stay on the interim board. Later I became chairman of Gorton, and it's been my privilege to be chair for the past 3 years. We all know that Gorton Gordon has a long and rich history of serving the communities of Lake Forest and Lake Bluff. For 42 years, Gordon has been a centerpiece of our town, offering cultural and educational programs to help connect residents to one another. However, in 2010, Gordon had a very uncertain future. The deep recession had taken its toll, causing serious financial troubles that threatened Gordon's long-term stability. The City of Lake Forest, along with an interim board led by George Panglione and Bob Kiley, helped develop a roadmap for Gordon's future. So a new board was formed at the beginning of 2011 with a focus on members with expertise in accounting, finance, investments, and strategic planning. Brenda Dick, our dynamic executive director, was also hired at that time. New staff positions in program development, marketing, fundraising were created. Gordon was now ready to rebuild itself. Today, Gordon is absolutely thriving. We have a highly engaged board of directors of 19 members, a committed, hardworking, full and part-time staff who have created unique programs for all ages, and a genuine sense of excitement about who we are and what we can become. Clearly, Gordon's a very high-energy place, and we've reclaimed our role as in a vital part of Lake Forest and Lake Bluff's community. So we had comprehensive accounting in place and budgeting systems. We had a strong board. We had the right management team. What we were missing was your community voice. So to plan for our future, in 2012, we invited residents to participate in a community brainstorming session we called the Big Think. The Big Think helped us generate ideas about the kinds of programs that the community was looking for, and helped us define our objectives for the building space. The Big Think was a critical step for us, helping us define the community's vision and motivating the board to put these ideas and plans into action. So the first thing that we did was we hired Stephen Wright and his firm, Wright Harima Architects, to develop a concept plan and design to renovate the entire first floor of Gordon, including the theater. And we hired Termole and Watkins and Brandt to assess our fundraising potential. So tonight, I'm proud to introduce you to the new Gordon. This is a visual of a rendering of the Grand Hall. It's going to be a 21st century performing arts and education center, and announce our capital campaign that we call Community Spirit Transformed. This is not just about Gordon's physical transformation, which Steve will talk about in a moment. It's also about creating a stable fiscal foundation for Gordon, which is why this campaign includes both dollars for the renovation and for a substantial endowment. So with that said, Steve, will you walk through the details of the renovation, please?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Without doubt, the excitement that's there, I think you can feel and hear about, but the building is a little bit underwhelming in terms of meeting those expectations of the programs that are being developed. And so what this was about is to see how we could bring that up to the level of the programs and the expectations the community has. It's a classic old school, center hall, and if you go in now, it feels like class is in session. You don't see anyone, don't feel that the energy is there. So part of our role was to open that up and to make you see people and feel the excitement that's going on. So this is a view of the new opened hall. So starting from the west side, we're going to open up that stairway where most of the people come in to a glass wall so that you'll be able to see and feel like you're coming into a main part. We're also moving and adjusting the offices to allow people that are in the offices to be more visible and to greet people as they come in. We're creating a media wall here to announce what's going on in all the programs and let people know what's happening. Behind this slide, on the other side, just behind here, we're also opening up and announcing the theater so that you know that this jewel is there. And without doubt, the highlight of the program is to create a proper theater. And through the generosity of the Hughes family, in honor of John Hughes, we are completely renovating the theater. So new sound, new lighting, and a new digital cinema projector system that will be really first-rate, on a par with any first-rate movie theater. So new seats and new finishes that will bring this up to the highest standards to allow film to be shown properly. All those things, the lighting and the sound, will also allow us to do proper theater, presentations, and any other kinds of things that are there. So really exciting to see what's happening to the theater. Also, the solarium, which is the entry vestibule, is really a grand space, but right now is not able to be utilized, so we're putting in systems and other support things to allow it to be used on a more year-round basis and be more of an entry. And we're opening up so that you can see into the theater a little bit more and celebrate the presence of the theater. And then when you come to the Stewart Room, we're really renovating that, putting in new systems for sound and lighting, acoustics, a proper new ceiling that gets rid of the old drop-in, lay-in ceiling, and putting in 2 projectors so that it can serve both social events, business, and community events in a proper way. The green room is the other part of this. It right now is a small isolated room, again, not living up to its potential. We'll open up the entrance from the vestibule and the connection to the Stewart Room so we can have a proper activities go on there, and also putting in a new bathroom for the men. The 2 little individual units will be replaced. So when we're all done, we think we have that energy and all the appearance, the feel that it needs to have will be there to support the wonderful programs that are going on. So that's the new Gorton. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, capital campaign. All right, let me give you an update. I'll tell you, this has been really exciting. We've really done a great job on the fundraising. It's been possible because our community's early and enthusiastic support during the quiet phase of this campaign. The campaign started in fall of 2013. And last December, Gorton was the beneficiary of an incredibly generous gift from Nancy Hughes. Mrs. Hughes gave us $1.5 million to name the theater the John and Nancy Hughes Theater. In addition to that, she endowed a new John Hughes film series with $500,000, which ensures that Gorton will be able to present high-quality films for years to come. I think that's one of the most exciting things about what's going on is the film series. And the Hughes gift has been absolutely transformative to our campaign success and Gorton as a whole. Additionally, we've received 25 gifts of $100,000 or more. 100% of our board has donated to the campaign for a total of over $1 million. So not only are we working hard, we're also vested in it financially. Our advisory committee has taken the lead by securing a number of key campaign gifts, and we've been thrilled by the response so far. So $5.9 million has been raised. Our goal is $6.5 million, so we're not done yet. Tonight we're launching the public phase of the Community Spirit Transform campaign, and we're inviting you and your neighbors and your friends to come and help us bring our community center's plans to life. So we're very proud of what we've been able to accomplish relative to the capital campaign. So, in conclusion, I'm very happy to say that after 3 years of planning, and our construction actually began last Monday, and November 10th. And here's a slide of the entire board with our hard hats on, and I have a sledgehammer in my hand. I was trying to knock the walls down, but Brenda got in my way. I wasn't able to swing it. But we're demolitioning right now. Bully and Andrews is handling it. So for the next several months, the entire first floor of the theater will be transformed. We anticipate the $3.9 million renovation to be completed by the spring of next year. We have an exceptional design and development team in place to ensure that the project goes smoothly. Stephen Wright, his firm, is the architect. We've hired Ross Friedman of Resourceful Solutions to act as the Gorton's owner's representative, so he's actually running the project for us. And we have a very reputable general contractor in Bully and Andrews. They have extensive experience in renovating and building theaters throughout Chicago. Not to mention our staff and our volunteers are all working hard to ensure this project goes smoothly. So I want to just thank the mayor, the aldermen, city staff, Bob Kiley, for your continued support for Gorton. We wouldn't be able to do it without you, obviously. You've been incredibly cooperative, and it's helped us accelerate this process, and we really, really appreciate it. And finally, we invite the entire community to come out and check out the new Gorton once it's renovated. Once it's done next spring, I think you're going to really like what you see. Thank you.
Thank you, Blair, very much. Questions for Blair? Mike?
Just a comment. I was looking through the financials and saw a line item for website, and it prompted me to go online and look up the Gorton website. And I was pretty flabbergasted by what I saw there. The breadth of programs that are offered to the community that I personally was not aware of made me kind of feel like an idiot. But I don't know if the city website links to the Gorton one, but maybe there ought to be a cross-reference or a link to it, because it's a tremendous source of information.
It does.
Great. So I commend you for that.
Anyone else?
I would just like to say how exciting I think this is. There were a few years ago when we really didn't know what the future of Gorton was going to be. The idea that within a few years we would have extraordinary volunteers, staff leadership, interim support from the mayor and Alderman Pandeleon to get us to the place that we are today is just it's a great story, and it's going to be a beautiful building that will remind us of the power of people working together to not let go of something that turned out to be something we did not want to be without. So congratulations to you all. It's really going to be fun to see this happen. It's great.
Thank you.
I'd also like to say, I went through it today with Brenda, and her knowledge of every lighting panel and rail that a curtain slides on and doorway, and I'm sure we've got great oversight, but the fact that that she's so in touch with exactly what needs to get done and how it's getting done is really a benefit to all of us.
I think she could be the project manager. I don't even know we need to hire anybody.
Evidently, she's leaving in the middle of it to go see some relative or something. So.
All right.
No, I'm joking.
Well, thank you.
Blair, on behalf of, certainly on behalf of the council, but on behalf of the community, thank you for your passion, for everyone on the board, for what you've done, for the tremendous leadership you've shown. I want to thank Brenda as well, because you truly are the spirit of Gorton, and you've done a tremendous job. So on behalf of the community, thank you for, as Alderman Beiler said, really bringing the spirit of Gorton back to life, and we look forward to seeing how that's all going to look come spring. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask the council for a motion to approve the Gorton Community Center annual budget and plan.
So moved.
Second?
Roll call vote, please.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Beidler.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Pandeleon.
Aye.
Alderman Tack.
Aye.
Alderman Reisenberg.
Aye.
Alderman Edelman.
Aye.
Alderman Moreno.
Aye.
8 yeas, 0 nay. Motion carries.
I don't mean to slow you down at all, but Mark Ventlin is here, and I don't know if you just wanted to say anything to Mark about the budget, or if he spent a lot of time putting this together.
Mark, I was just trying to slide it right through. I'm sorry.
Mark, if you don't want to say anything, that's okay too, but I feel badly.
No, I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you for this opportunity. I'll point out a few things. Our revenue next year is going to be impacted by the construction by about $25,000, being closed part of the year and whatnot. Offsetting that, towards the end of the year, we do anticipate having more programs and events that'll help kind of make up for that. Our operating expense, the only real notable item there is we are planning to hire one more person on a full-time basis to operate the theater. At some point, there might be an opportunity to recover some of that cost from the users in terms of fees, because there's so much technology that we don't want to really have an outside person come in and operate that. We want to really have that done by our own person. Other than that, depreciation expense obviously is increasing a great deal because of the construction. The last thing I will point out, the endowment by the end of the year will be around $2.4 million. By the time, if we raise our goal, and our hope is of course to exceed that, but if we raise our goal by the end of the process, that number will be right around $3.5 million. That will be an endowment that we can use the income from forever. So, happy to answer any questions.
The large net loss at the end of the budget is reflective of, before we take the 2.8 million that's coming out of the money that we've raised?
The large loss is before fundraising income.
That's kind of my question.
And it includes depreciation of almost $250,000. We always say that on an ongoing basis, we will lose money on operations, that we need fundraising more or less constantly, annual giving, to make up for our operating loss, because our mission as a community center means that we lose money operating it. The alternative is to raise costs and fees, and that's something we want to avoid, if at all possible.
Any other questions for Mark? Now that we've got him up here.
I'd just like to reiterate and maybe point out a couple of things that have been said in this presentation that I thought were a bit euphemistic. Cortland was broke. I mean, flat out broke and threatened with abandonment in 2010. And here we are, 4 years later, solidly in the black, operating, cash flow positive, a $3 million construction campaign underway, and $2.5 million in the bank as a permanent endowment. I mean, we talked about those things as pipe dreams. Boy, we got to fix the place up. We've got to get it back on its feet. And then we really need to protect it for the future by getting an endowment. And I can remember having a conversation with Brenda Dick, I think it was at the Health and Fitness Center out by the hospital, and I remember her sort of rolling her eyes a bit as we talked about these things. And, here we are, 4 years. I don't want to say mission accomplished, but, because there's more to do, but boy, what a story. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, thanks very much. Next item on the agenda, Elawa Farm budget presentation presented by also Chairman George Pantelleon, Holly Brown, Chairman, and Joanne Miller, Executive Director of Elawa Farm.
Yeah. I'd like to introduce Holly Brown, the chairman, and Joanne Miller, the executive director of Elawa Farm, to present the 2015 budget?
Correct.
I don't know if, I guess you're on a fiscal year like we are, so.
Right, we're on the calendar year. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Joanne Miller, the Executive Director of the Elawa Farm Foundation, and I'm honored to be here tonight to report to you on what has been going on and what a wonderful year we've had this last year. We started off in March by signing the contract between the city and ourselves, which was the operating agreement giving the foundation the day-to-day management and ultimately responsibility and oversight of the buildings. This was done and will continue to be being oversighted by the council and ultimately the Elua Farm Commission. I'd like to share some highlights with you on what we've been doing out at the farm. We started off the spring by reintroducing our new and improved garden market with the help of our mayor at the ribbon cutting ceremony. Shortly thereafter, we were highlighted on an ABC News, The Hungry Hound, with Steve Dolinsky as the reporter. He did a wonderful job creating a new buzz about us. We had many folks stopping in at the market commenting on how they had seen us on TV. One of our greatest assets is our volunteers. From local men and women, grade school kids, and Lake Forest College students, we are so very grateful for their contribution to who we are today. The real oohs and ahs, along with great income, come from our daily rentals. Can you hear? What happened?
There you go.
Sorry. All of a sudden, I didn't hear myself. I'll start over. The real oohs and ahs, along with the, hello?
Yep.
See? Okay,
yep.
sorry. Along with our great income, comes from our daily rentals, like weddings and nonprofit events. We hear back all summer long how special the venue at Elua Farm is, and how we, Lake Forest and Lake Bluff residents, should feel very proud that it is in our backyard. Whoop. There. Another exciting activity here is our programming. Gail Gann's master classes continue to fill up every month, so often that we end up adding another class. Surprising us all with the continued amount of activity has been our Beboppers class. It is for moms, grandmoms, or sitters with their 3-year-olds, up to 3-year-olds, to come shake, sing, and bebop with singer-songwriter Lindsay Smithwick. One of our newest friend and fundraisers is our fall farm dinner, the feast. It has been a wonderful opportunity to highlight our produce by being served at dinner. This event, along with our summer solstice put on by our associate board, are also perfect donor cultivation opportunities. Every year, we see continued growth in participants and net income. We will be concluding our year with a great fundraiser, the Elua Farm Holiday Market, on the first weekend of December. We offer potted arrangements, trees, wreaths, assorted greens, and goodies from the Elua kitchen. This year, along with our traditional gingerbread houses, we will be selling gingerbread dog houses made from a variety of dog treats. As in the past, there will be other local small businesses selling their wares too. Thank you for this opportunity. How come our stuff didn't work?
You'll have to talk to Susan Banks.
Yeah, I know. No! It's not a fancy font.
We'll have to check your software at Elua.
I was going to say, it's not a fancy font. There you go. Anyways, thank you again for this opportunity, and I hope to see you out at the farm.
Thanks very much. Any questions for Joanne or for Holly while we have them?
I'm going to introduce Holly.
I'm Holly Brown, and I have the privilege of serving as chairman of the Elua Farm Commission. And as Joanne said, it's been a very interesting year, culminating with the agreement with the city in March. So the job of the commission is to oversee the financials. And you have a packet before you with a summary budget and detailed budget that was approved by the board of the Elua Farm Foundation in October, submitted to the Finance Committee of the Commission, and then the full Commission approved the budget at our November 6th meeting. So I'm here recommending approval of the 2015 budget.
Any questions on the budget? Looks like you're off the hook.
Okay.
See, I thought one of the questions was going to be, when are you going to have a $3 million endowment?
I said to Joanne as they were showing their budget, I said, we're just peanuts. But I like to refer to us as the new jewel of Westlake Forest. So if you haven't been out to the farm recently, you really should go out for the holiday market. And the dog houses, the gingerbread houses for dogs are spectacular.
And I can vouch, and it was a thrill to be a part of opening up the farm market this spring. It's an incredible place, and I could have wandered around there for quite a long time. But it's a great place, and thank you for all that both of you do. And you have a tremendous group of volunteers who, there are so many who give so much. So again, on behalf of the community, thank you for making Elwha such a special part of Lake Forest and for all you do for it. So thank you. I'd like to have a motion to consider approval of the Elwha Farm Annual Budget and Plan.
So moved.
Second.
Biddy, roll call vote, please.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Beidler.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Pandeleon.
Aye.
Alderman Tack.
Aye.
Alderman Reisenberg.
Aye.
Alderman Edelman.
Aye.
Alderman Moreno.
Aye.
8 yeas, 0 nay, motion carries.
Thank you, Biddy. Congratulations. Next item on the agenda, consideration of an ordinance establishing the 2014 tax levy, first reading, presented by Elizabeth Hollab, Finance Director.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. The next few items on your agenda were the subject of discussion at a November 5th Finance Committee meeting, but they are presented this evening for formal presentation and first reading consideration by the City Council. So the first item is, of course, the tax levy ordinance for 2014. There are a few schedules here that I will not go through in detail, but I'll explain what they are. They were provided in your packet and also presented at the November 5th Finance Committee discussion. This first schedule just simply shows a demonstration of the formula used to develop the tax levy amount that falls under the cap. Although the city is home rule, it does follow the property tax extension limitation law subject to non-home rule communities in the collar counties. A few things to note in this presentation is that here we start out this formula using an estimated equalized assessed valuation provided by Lake County. And they are currently estimating the EAV subject to the 2014 levy at a 0.5% increase. That may not seem significant, but after 3 years of declines, it is indicative that assessed valuations are starting to level off, and we are seeing the first increase in several years. So that's a positive. We're also provided by Lake County an estimate of new construction growth for 2014. So that is assessed valuation that is going on the tax rolls for the first time and is excluded and is in addition to the tax cap limitation. So we do the formula, and you can see down here that the overall estimated increase in the aggregate levy is 101.9%. That is 1.5%. That is the tax cap, and a 0.4% increase related to that $9 million in new construction. The next schedule shows the distribution of the tax levy in the individual line items. We have the first half of the page is the tax levy that falls under the tax cap, which is the 1.5%. And you can see that in most line items, we simply add the tax cap percentage to the prior year's extended levy. However, two deviations occur in police and fire pension because we levy the amounts that are the actuarially determined amount by our independent actuary. So you can see that those increases actually are more than the tax cap. So the difference comes out of the general unrestricted levy, and that's why you see an increase in that line item of just 0.85%. And then below the second half are the tax levy items that are not subject to tax cap. So you have the debt service levy, and then you have three items that are excluded from the tax cap: the fire pension amount. This is enhancements that were approved by the Illinois General Assembly a few years ago, and the cost of those are calculated outside the tax cap. Special recreation, and then the new growth amount that was discussed on the previous page. New growth is distributed pro rata between the general fund levy and the library levy. So on the next page, you see that tax levy amount beginning to roll up. The new construction amount is included in the general and library line items. So you can see after new construction growth, the general fund unrestricted amount is going up 1.54%. Overall, the grand total tax levy is going up by 1.88%. And the final schedule depicts an estimated impact on an average home. We use an $800,000 home in Lake Forest based on the EAV estimates and the tax levy presented for your consideration. The projected impact on an $800,000 home is $49 over the current year's tax bill, which is a 1.48% increase. And that relates to the portion of the levy that is related to the city and library, which makes up about 22.7% of the total tax bill. So the actual levy ordinance is in your packet, and we would ask the City Council to consider first reading approval of that ordinance, and we would bring that back for second reading on December 1st.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Questions? I know we went through this at length earlier on in the budget session, but anything specific for Elizabeth this evening? If not, I'll ask for anyone in the public who would like to make comment on this matter. Seeing none, then I will ask the council I will ask for a motion to grant first reading of the ordinance establishing the 2014 tax levy.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please, Penny.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Beidler.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Pandeleon.
Aye.
Alderman Tack.
Aye.
Alderman Reisenberg.
Aye.
Alderman Edelman.
Aye.
Alderman Moreno.
Aye.
8 yeas, 0 nay. Motion carries.
Thank you, Betty, very much. And she won't go anywhere. Item number 4, approval of ordinances abating the 2014 tax levies for various GO alternate revenue bond issues. First reading by Elizabeth Olive.
Thank you, Mayor. This schedule depicts the actual bond issues that are currently outstanding. The city's practice is to issue all debt as general obligation debt with the full faith and credit of the city because you can earn the best interest rate by doing so. However, there are certain bond issues that are intended to be repaid by alternate revenue sources than property taxes. So this table depicts the issue years, 2008 and down, the total levy per the county records based on the principal and interest payments due next year. And then in the columns to the right, the alternate revenue sources intended to pay portions of the debt service related to those issues. So what you have before you this evening are 4 ordinances that relate to 2010B, 2010C, 2011A, and 2011B, all of which have alternate revenue sources paying a portion or all of the debt service related to that bond issue for approval, which will reduce the debt service levy to the amount that was included in the tax levy discussion on the previous item.
Questions on this matter for Elizabeth?
A quick question on bond rates. I know that we did so well on that. I think it was the
2011
2011, yeah, that was a 1.4 something ridiculous, or, anyway, it was low. Don't quote me, but how are those rates looking as we move forward?
In talking to Spear Financial, our financial advisory firm, in today's market, you would expect on a 20-year issue an average interest cost of 2.85 to 3% for a AAA rating similar to Lake Forest. So we're in the high 2s to 3%.
Any other questions? Anyone from the public care to comment on this matter? If not, I'll ask for approval of ordinance abating tax levies for various general obligation bond issues. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Roll call vote, please.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Beidler.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Pandeleon.
Aye.
Alderman Tack.
Aye.
Alderman Reisenberg.
Aye.
Alderman Edelman.
Aye.
Alderman Moreno.
Aye.
8 yeas, 0 nay. Motion carries.
Thank you, Betty. And finally, number 5, consideration of an ordinance approving a fee schedule. Ordinance is adopting new fees related to liquor license penalty and credit card service fees, and an ordinance amending the city code relating to the direct debit program for the water bills. And again, Elizabeth Olive.
Thank you, Mayor. One of the first items in our annual budget process is for operating departments to review the comprehensive fee schedule of the city and to propose any recommended changes or new fees for consideration by the city council. We then use those revenue estimates to develop our operating budgets in January for presentation to you in March. This slide provides a summary of the changes proposed for FY16. In the comprehensive fee schedule, it is recommended that the water consumption fees change. Next year, a 3% increase effective May 1st. That would be based on the water consumption per 1,000-gallon charge. That is estimated based on a 5-year average of water sales to result in about $175,000 in additional revenue, and helps to offset inflationary cost increases in the water fund because fees are the only funding source in the water fund. The next is that there are a number of Parks and Recreation adjusted fees proposed in the fee schedule, but in summary, they're projected to increase golf revenues about $4,000 per year, lakefront, which is in the Parks and Recreation Fund, of about $300, and in recreation programming in the Parks and Recreation Fund, $42,238. There are 2 new fees proposed. Those are separate ordinances included in the packet. The first is a liquor license penalty fee proposed by the Office of the City Manager, and that would be estimated to generate $750 per year. And also a credit card service fee. There was discussion at the November 5th Finance Committee meeting regarding the potential for an across-the-board service fee on credit card transactions, which the Finance Committee's consensus was not to assess that across the board, but to look at segments of sales individually as to where that might be appropriate. Based on the staff's review, there are 2 areas that are recommended for consideration. First is building permits. We currently don't allow building permit fees to be paid by credit card due to the size of the transaction and the resulting fees. So it's recommended that the city adopt a fee up to 3% of the transaction to allow for those developers or applicants who wish to pay their building permit fee by credit card to do so. And then the second, the daily parking fees at the Telegraph Road commuter station. Because of the small size of individual transactions, the city incurs significant fees in that area for credit card payments. And we're recommending a flat 25 cents per transaction for that segment. There is one final ordinance presented in the packet. It amends city code to eliminate the $1 per quarter discount for the auto debit program for water bills. We're rolling out online water bill payments in January, and that program has become a sticking point with the software vendor in technology, the software capacity. So we're recommending eliminating that, and that would generate additional revenue of $26,692 to the water fund. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions on this?
No question, but just a point. So the 3% increase in water consumption charges also covers the credit card fees for constituents who pay their water bills by credit card. Is that not right?
Correct.
Anyone else? Anyone from the public care to comment on this matter? So would you come forward and state your name and address, please?
Paul Hammond, 511 Beverly, Lake Forest, 55-year resident of Lake Forest. I have a few comments regarding credit card fees. I am for a credit card fee for all transactions with the city. If you want to pay your federal income tax with a credit card, the fee is 2.35%. So if you pay $100,000 in federal income tax, then the credit card fee would be $2,350. I don't know anyone who pays their federal income tax with a credit card. What I find interesting is when I trade $100,000 of stock at Interactive Brokers, they charge me $1. So Interactive Broker can buy the stock, transfer the money, deliver the stock to my account, all for just $1. But the credit card company wants $2,350 to transfer that same amount of money to the government. So obviously the credit card company can give the cardholder $2,000 of frequent flyer miles and still make money. The credit card company can give the credit card holder cash back of $2,000 and still make money. So in conclusion, if a resident wants frequent flyer miles or cash back, then let them pay for it. The city should add a statement to the bill that the city is not subsidizing frequent flyer miles and cash back programs, so there is an extra fee for credit card usage. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? If not, I'll ask for a motion to grant first reading the proposed ordinances.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Beidler.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Pendleon.
Aye.
Alderman Tack.
Aye.
Alderman Reisenberg.
Aye.
Alderman Edelman.
Aye.
Alderman Moreno.
Aye.
8 yeas, 0 nay, motion's carried.
Thank you, Betty, very much. Next item on the agenda, consideration of a resolution regarding the termination of an intergovernmental agreement and approval of a wind-up agreement with District 67 and ordinances terminating special service areas 15, 33, 34, 35, and 36. First reading presented by Vic Filippini, City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. In 1994, the city and District 67 entered into an agreement which was intended to try to address some of the impacts of new development in the city on the school. Over the course of the last 20 years, the city has, as part of that agreement, established 5 different special service areas for new subdivisions that have come online. At the time the agreement was entered into, the expectation was that those subdivisions would generate a substantial number of students, and there were some special services that would be required in order to provide for those students. As it turns out, those subdivisions have not been quite as significant in terms of the additional student population. And as we are now at the conclusion of that agreement, there are a number of issues that are still outstanding in terms of closing out the agreement. Among those, what monies, if any, the school would continue to receive. Now, one of the things about the special service areas is that their timing was based on when they were established, not the timing of the agreement. And so one of the things that is before the council tonight is a resolution to approve the expiration of the agreement, which in fact has occurred. So it's not something that you're necessarily doing, but some of the wind-up aspects of that. Additionally, we have a separate wind-up agreement with the school district, and that covers 2 things. One is an acknowledgement that the termination of the special service areas, which is part and parcel of this entire action, would not require the city to provide any additional sums under the intergovernmental agreement to the district. Second, in the course of reviewing some of the issues with the school district, there was a bit of an inventory taken, and we were talking about Ellowa earlier this evening. Well, part of that same overall area is the Middle Fork subdivision, and there was a parcel that was originally provided to the city for both open space, park, and school uses. The school has a dibs, if you will, on a portion of that school, of that site rather, and the city has continued to use that as open space to this point, and there have been from time to time plans looked at for some more active recreation. So what this agreement also is doing, in addition to winding up all of the issues under the 1994 intergovernmental agreement, would also be having the school relinquish any claim it has to the school use of that property out in the Middle Fork subdivision. If you are so inclined, the action being recommended tonight would be to approve the resolution that would identify some of the concluding aspects of the intergovernmental agreement from 1994 and the wind-up agreement to have both the school and the city sign off on all of the loose ends, if you will, as well as the relinquishment by the school of its interest in the Middle Fork site. Additionally, first reading is sought on the 5 ordinances to terminate the special service areas that were created under the intergovernmental agreement. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Mike?
I was only joking about that.
No. The 5 special service agreement areas. First of all, I understand the intergovernmental agreement from 1994, it expired this year, 20 years later.
Correct.
But the SSAs, when do the 5 of them expire?
They have, if you take no action tonight, they have different expiration dates depending on when they were established.
That wasn't indicated in the write-ups.
It would have taken a lot more space to try to give you a complete answer to that.
And the other thing I didn't understand was which 5 special service areas are they? It didn't discuss which subdivisions the numbers correlated.
All right, I will make a guess, but I'm going to have to get Kathy's assistance. Amberley?
Amberley Woods, Middle Fork, Regents Row.
Wait, don't go so fast. Amberley?
Middle Fork, Regents Row, Thornhill, Thorngate?
Thorngate and Willow Lake.
And Willow Lake.
Willow Lake. Well, that hasn't generated any people. Okay, so hasn't the school district received money from these SSAs every year?
It has.
Okay, but everybody acknowledges they haven't impacted the schools appreciably, such that they're willing to...
My understanding is that the school district is willing to relinquish any further claim to the SSAs, in part because of the imbalance between what was expected and what has been the realization of student generation.
Okay, and the school district has done a long-term analysis and concluded that they're never going to build another school over near Elloa. So why are we paying them $350,000?
Because as a part of this wind-up, they, part of the special service areas were to support the issuance of debt for expansion of some of the School District 67 facilities. That debt is still outstanding and continues through, I think, 2019. And so part of this is both for relinquishing the claims on the 5 acres of property, which they have rights to, if you will, but also to reflect the balance of the debt that is due between now and 2019. So it's sort of a combination of obligations.
Is a $350 to cover the debt service or principal? Can you quantify the?
Yeah, it's basically the net present value of the payments between now and 2019.
2019. Well, I'm all for terminating doing the wind-up for terminating the 5 SSAs. I'm not real keen on spending $350,000 to get them to relinquish their interest in the land, knowing that they have no interest in ever building a school over there, and it's going to cost them millions if they change their mind.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about the rest of you guys.
I agree.
There is a quid pro quo here in terms of they are abandoning something and then giving something back. I thought it was a fair deal. If that's what it takes to get this thing abandoned, and it gets them to agree with it, I'm in favor of it, because quite frankly, all these things are in the 3rd Ward. They're nothing but a thorn in the side of the residents of the 3rd Ward. I'm getting sick and tired of getting cards and letters and phone calls and asking me to try to justify something that is unjustifiable. And if this is what it takes to make it go away, I'm all in favor of it, quite frankly, because these residents have got to stop being put upon and being taxed for something that that is actually totally unfair in my regard.
I have a slightly different view on it. The property was, the developers agreed to the SSAs, the landowners bought it in full knowledge of the SSAs, and I think it's wrong for all the citizens of Lake Forest to cover the obligations of the few people that live in these SSAs for the $350,000.
For God's sakes, David,
let me finish.
Tell me how many students live in Regents Row.
That's not the point.
That's not the point.
It was a bargain for...
That's not the point at all. The point is that they bought something with their eyes wide open. We now have a liability for this with the schools. and that I don't live in an SSA, I didn't agree to buy anything with an SSA, or my neighbors didn't agree to this, and we are going to be subsidizing the people that live in these SSAs so that they don't have to, so that they can stop writing letters.
How would, go ahead, sorry, David.
That's okay. I think it's a, when you buy something with your eyes wide open, if it doesn't have...
How are their eyes wide open?
When they bought their land, it said this is subject to an SSA.
And where are they told in that process?
Their attorney tells them.
In this group of documents that you get at closing?
Well, their attorney's
They're obligated to-
When you show up to say, and your attorney says, sign this, sign this,
Yes.
sign this, sign this.
That's exactly where they
Well, you know,
were
it's
misrepresented,
It's a
yes.
terribly unfair process, if that's what you have to rely
Like
on.
not knowing the
because
speed limit and then getting arrested. for speeding.
No, there you got a sign that hits you in the face. You don't have thousands of pages of documents that
I
are given
can't
to you.
argue ignorance of the law, but I do believe that when I'm presented with documents, as I was presented today, I read the documents related to the focus group. I presented 8 or 9 questions because I read it all the way through, and Mr. Edelman was my attorney in a real estate closing. We went through every single line of every single document, as I feel obligated to, as you're responsible to when you buy real estate. And the irresponsibility of somebody, or the misconception of something, or the lack of coverage by an attorney, these are not the problems of people that didn't buy land in SSAs. And I find it offensive to subsidize someone who is careless or has second thoughts about what they did.
I don't know if, and I truly appreciate your arguments, everyone's arguments. I don't know if the question for me boils down to, whether, they went into it with their eyes open, because as you point out, I'm sure that their real estate contract said what it said. And, but then, at the end of the day, all these years later, there's a question of fairness. Despite what they knew or should have known when they signed the contract, it does seem sort of fundamentally unfair that, no children live in Regents Row, nor will, I'm pretty sure, they ever. So, I don't know. I certainly see.
So they entered into a bad contract.
Well,
This is righting a wrong. This is elimination of something that should never been put in place.
And I think they should negotiate with the school district, and they should bail themselves out at the best they can, and not burden the people that weren't part of those SSAs.
So David, suppose this never happens. So they just continue to be put upon by something that never should have been put in place.
It is a
They
finite
signed
life,
it.
Jack. It's
They
got a
agreed
finite
to it.
life.
Oh, sure. Well, I guess.
It's got a finite
They
life.
agreed to this when they bought the property.
So the people who live in Willow Lake should have a finite life. The people that live in Shorn Gate, the Middle Fork, the Academy Woods people, or rather Amberley Woods people have going to do this for another 15 years? It's terribly unfair.
My cousin lost his job and wasn't able to pay his property taxes. Should we vote on that here? He lives in Milwaukee.
I'm not going to.
No, I guess my point is, they entered into an agreement, they signed the documents, and if they didn't know what they were doing, then they were careless. And why would anybody else in the city feel at all compelled to take money out of the general fund, which we all contribute to bail out a particular group from an unfair but yet agreed to piece?
I have a couple of questions. I've actually
It
had
just seems
I've had the
intellectual.
privilege of arguing this from both directions because I was approached by the Illinois Association of Realtors a couple of years ago with a rather litigious bent about this whole situation. And I made the same arguments that Alderman Moore is making when asked what I thought. And actually, I would ask Mr. Filippini to give us a little bit of background on some of the legalities here.
You've got that bigger clue, please, look on your face.
No, it's more a matter that there are issues of threatened litigation that have arisen in connection with this. And I think as this has been reviewed over a course of time, this isn't something that has simply cropped up. In fact, this conversation's been going on for several years. There are certainly questions that could, if challenged, be rendered adversely to the city and the school district. I don't want to predict an outcome of litigation, but certainly there is not an impossibility of litigation and an impossibility that the litigation would be adverse at the outcome to the city and or school district. I think in part that has been a factor in the conversations that the city and the school district have had. I think that there's also been consideration about the budgetary impacts on the school district, since it did issue bonds partially in reliance on the expected flow of revenues that have come in. So I think as this is a matter that city staff and the school district have been conferring with, and I shouldn't say just city staff, members of the council have also been involved in these conversations. A number of those considerations relating to the propriety of the special service areas, the legality of the special service areas, and the fairness of the special service areas have all been part and parcel of that conversation.
But any litigation would change the threat assessment of any situation, correct?
There's always the risk that someone's going to file a silly lawsuit about something. I'm not quite sure that this would fall under the category of silly lawsuits as far as I'm concerned.
More serious than, okay. And then where's the fairness in people outside of these SSAs and paying for them?
David, could I just interject a request for some history that I think that could, I'm wondering what our precedents are in the city. Do we have a precedent for doing something like this? I mean, I'm hearing two sides of something that I'm not sure I really know how to make full sense of it if I don't know if we've done something like this before.
To my knowledge, this agreement is unique. Not just unique to Lake Forest, but unique generally. I represent many municipalities, and never have I encountered an agreement much like the one that expired in the summer of this year.
Okay, David, you're back on.
Can I just maybe, let me add a little more historical perspective, because I guess looking around the table, I'm the only one that was here at the time that this was originally negotiated. And
so it's your fault.
It's all my fault, that's right. And I think it's important to understand the context of the time. At that time, there was a general sense of, let's see if we can finance capital improvements for expansion of school system without burdening the taxpayer. And so I think to Alderman Moore's point, it was, this is a piece of how we can expand Everett, expand Cherokee, expand Deer Path Middle School without burdening or going to referendum, if you will, the entire population of Lake Forest. Now, whether today we view that as right or wrong is irrelevant. That was the consideration back at that time, and I think as Vic indicated, this is unique, and I think it was seen as a tool that could be unique to Lake Forest, but it was also the unique relationship that the city and the School District 67 had at that time and continue to have at this time, because in theory, or not in theory, in reality, the city of Lake Forest owns the school district buildings, 67 school district buildings. Those are all your property. They are a tenant of your property. So that's important to keep in mind. And I think going back to Alderman Edelman's point is also at that time, there was property at Meadowood Park and there was property at Northcroft Park that had similar encumbrances on them. And at that time, we actually subdivided portions of that property and gave proceeds from the sale of those subdivisions to School District 67 to, again, help them to finance the expansion of their schools at that time. So I think in looking at this package, I think you have clearly discussed the breadth of issues that are at hand here, and there is no right or wrong. It's just sort of a number of competing interests that exist at this point in time. And in our conversations with Representative School District 67, we saw this as an opportunity to wrap all this together, to take care of the SSAs, to get them off the books, but then at the same time, to follow a precedent that we had set at both Meadowood and Northcroft, and to remove the encumbrances that 67 had on 5 acres at Elua Park that says they don't need it now, so they're relinquishing their rights in the future, and that will only be for park purposes going forward.
Okay, Bob Shaw gave that land to the school district, so it was a gift. It's not like the school district paid for it. When he developed Middle Fork Farms, he gave the land to the school district.
Actually, he didn't. He gave the land to the city, and as a part of the public hearing process, there, at that time anyways, there was thought that the northwest quadrant of the city was going to grow, and such they would need a neighborhood school up in that quadrant of the city.
But then the land wasn't originally part of the Carroll holdings that he acquired?
It was, but it was really a part of the 17 acres that came to the city of Lake Forest.
Okay. But it didn't cost District 67 anything?
It did not.
Okay. And they have collected monies from these 5 SSAs. Have any of our SSAs run out their full 20-year term?
No, I don't think so. I think we have 1 or 2 that are close, but the majority of them run into 2019. Even I think the last one goes to 2023.
We have other SSAs that aren't related to the
We have some
intergovernmental.
sanitary sewer SSAs, those kinds of things, yes.
So just staying with this ordinance, because that's the matter that's before us now, not the theoretical, is it fair, is it isn't fair? Because you can argue it both ways. People sat down with their attorneys at closing, and they were told, your real estate taxes are this, and by the way, there's an exception in Schedule B on your title insurance policy that says there's an SSA that's going to run for 20 years, and it's going to cost you $660 a year. And presumably, intelligent people factor that into the economic equation, and they adjust their fair market value for the house or their offering price based on what it's going to cost them to own the house. So they went into it with their eyes wide open, and you can't tell me that it was buried in a stack of papers. Having said that, I'm totally in favor of terminating these 5 special service areas. Totally in favor of it. I'm in favor of everything in the ordinance. I'm just not in favor of paying District 67 $350,000. They've gotten money out of the SSAs. It was a piece of land that they got for nothing. I think District 67's being greedy, and I think we should go back and ask them politely to agree to this ordinance and waive the $350,000 and then bring it back here and we'll pass it.
And with the danger of speculating about their response, they're going to say, well, we still have to pay the interest on the bonds.
What did they use the money for? They didn't build a new school on 5 acres.
No, they did. They built additions to Cherokee, huge addition to Cherokee. They renovated Everett School. They renovated Sheridan School and restructured the entire school district.
Right.
Okay,
And we own those buildings, and we got the capital benefit of those
how
bonds.
much of the revenue from the SSAs did they underwrite in that bond? I mean, 2% of it, 5%? I mean, how much of it covers, what percentage of it really covers their debt service? Realistically.
I don't know the answer to that question.
And as of right now, there are more children in those SSAs than there ever have been. A grand total of 37. Okay, so these expansions to Cherokee School, which doesn't serve any of these areas, none of these things were necessitated by these developments. None of them. So this has essentially been a windfall for District 67 on the backs of people who are treated as lesser members of our society. They're paying twice for their kids to go to public schools, the ones that have them. There are empty lots that are paying this SSA because they put a burden on the school district. I just think if you're really honest about this, this whole thing was a way of getting around doing a referendum. And if there was a referendum to expand the school district or fund it, everybody would have paid for it, and everybody would have voted for it. And to me, this whole thing was based on a fraud. Now, I understand that it was well-intentioned to start with, but it became very clear over time that this was patently unfair. And even though everybody knows it, District 67 knows it, they continued this. My feeling is, once this agreement ended, our obligation to them ends. Now, I happen to agree with you about the money. You know, I didn't really understand why we were coughing up this money for District 67, except as a way of trying to sort of peacefully make this go away. And that does put the burden on everybody else, but to me, that's where the burden should have been in the first place.
All right, but let me raise this question, because we've talked a lot about fairness here. And I guess keep in mind that a past city council engaged in both the agreement and setting up the SSAs. And if you were in the other, if the roles were reversed here, and you still had these obligations, as I said, they still have bonds paying off, and I think Alderman Edelman, to your point, they're generating roughly about $88,000 a year of revenue off of these 5 SSAs. If you were in their position, how would you feel if they came in and just simply said, we're shutting you down today? So I think that what was tried to the best of our ability was to craft a solution here that was reasonable to all parties, and keep in mind that, you know, 67 represents 25% of the taxpayers' budget as well. So it isn't like we're necessarily saving money. It's just, I think as Alderman Tack has pointed out, it really takes it from a smaller group to a larger group, but in effect, we're doing that by taking the $350,000 out of the general fund and relinquishing any encumbrance on that 5 acres of property.
Bob, can you explain the math on the 350? And that may be something I should understand, but I don't. Is that number at all flexible? Is that a number based on something that is inflexible?
How did we get it?
Well, I might ask the finance director to come forward, because basically we calculated to the debt payments between now and 2019 and what the net present value would have to be to give today to cover that period of time till 2019. Is that correct, Elizabeth?
Right. The natural life of these special service areas would extend from 2019 to 2029. So Middle Fork expires in 2019. Others go as long as 2029. However, because the debt service on the underlying bonds that the school district issued matures in 2019, we took the projected SSA levies from now through 2019 and discounted that to a net present value. That's how we got to the 350.
Question. Did I hear Bob correctly that the SSAs are throwing off $88,000 a year?
Right.
To the school district?
Right.
It makes 350 look pretty good then, doesn't it?
Bob, can I ask a question, just back to the property near Middle Fork? The city has title to it, correct? Do we have plans for it, either short-term or long-term? And B, if we don't, is it a property that potentially could be declared excess by the city and sold?
Very good question. This is, for those of you that can think of the Elua property, this would be the northeast corner of the property. Immediately adjacent, there's, I think, a historic home right there. And so this would be 5 acres immediately adjacent to that. We do not have, to my knowledge, any immediate plans for that. It's just open space right now. It would get close to the existing playground that's there, and that was actually why the playground was located there, so that it could be jointly used by the park and any future school site. But it isn't to say that the city council, if this encumbrance is removed, could decide at some future date that we want to carve off a lot or two and subdivide.
I mean, I'm almost looking at this and saying, basically, we're getting the SSAs to go away, and we're getting control of 5 acres for $70,000 an acre, which, relatively speaking, seems like a real bargain.
If I might, I'm sorry, Fred.
No, go
If I
ahead.
might add, there are covenants that have encumbrances on the use of the land for open space and/or park and/or school currently. The school is the one that has the right, obviously, to use it for the school purposes. Those covenants aren't what's going to be relinquished by this. It's really the school's claim for its part of that use.
Can those covenants be modified, Vic?
They can be modified. It goes back to the original grantor to modify them, however.
But would we in good faith do something to monetize that property? To justify spending $350,000? I don't think we would take that land and sell it. And if we did, at that point, we could do something. I think it was a bad idea. I think there was bad judgment, or bad judgment's too strong, bad forecasting on different people's parts. All the trends were looking like everything was going to burst back then. I think my niece was in a class that was the record breaker, and she's out of college by now, and now the schools are smaller, and it wasn't seen. It doesn't make sense to me in all of that, though, to charge people who didn't sign documents and agree to this to cover the debt of those who did. That's just, I just can't get past that. It's a bargain on the land and things like that. But
Here's what I might suggest. I think we've got first reading tonight on the ordinances. I think I'd like to ask the council for a motion to approve or vote down the first reading tonight, and then if we want to have some further discussion about it, Bob, if we want to engage in some more discussion perhaps post this meeting, we can do so. But I think the merits and the drawbacks, I think, are obvious on both sides. So I think I don't know if we're going to go much further tonight. So what I might perhaps do is call the question. Vic, did you want to?
If I might suggest that we table the resolution and do first reading just on the 5 ordinances.
Okay.
If I can just make one comment to follow up to what Alderman Moore said. I'm not as troubled about shifting the burden to the entire populace from the individuals in the 5 SSAs as I am about spending $350,000. We fight tooth and nail for every line item on the budget. I remember we've had extensive deliberations on whether to spend $87,000 on a Route 60 median or not, and then another $230,000 on that same median a year or two later or not. I mean, $350,000 is a lot of money. That's what troubles me, is how quickly we spend the money. And I would just like to explore with District 67 if they would consider some sort of relief on that number, knowing that they have bonds with debt service, yet knowing that in actuality those SSAs subsidize their capital expenditures on students that didn't come from those 5 SSAs. So that's what I'd like to see done.
I think I'll take Vic's idea. Let's table the resolution for the wind-up agreement, and I'd like to call for a motion on approval of the grant first reading of the ordinances. Do I have a motion?
hey, one quick thing. Why is it called wind-up? That sounds like it's getting ready to start over again.
It's really the conclusion of it. We're winding up the loose ends of it. If you want to call it wind down, we can call it wind down. We can call it a kumquat, too. I'm kind of indifferent as to that.
Look at it.
It just seemed like an odd thing.
John, I'm probably going to make the motion, but what am I making the motion on?
To table the resolution for the wind-up agreement, or wind-down agreement, and grant first reading of the ordinances.
What does that mean?
The ordinances mean?
The termination of the 5 SSAs.
So moved.
Wait,
Second.
Can I ask a question? I'm sorry. What's the difference?
Really?
The ordinances require 2 readings, the resolution only 1, so if you approve the resolution tonight, then it's final.
Got it.
What are we voting on? I'm not clear now.
So
You're not voting on the resolution. you are voting on, as first reading, the termination ordinances for the SSAs, which means that it'll just be poised for final action, either up or down, at some future date.
Well, isn't it true that the resolution is to allow the ending of the intergovernmental agreement, which is already ended?
You'll find in the intergovernmental agreement there are some post-termination activities that need to be done, and it's really to make sure that the parties are in agreement that those have been fully satisfied. So that's part of it, and one of the things that comes up, and this is why it's tied to the termination of the SSAs, is that there are monies that are to be distributed at the end of the intergovernmental agreement, which are tied to the SSAs. So if we are terminating them, we're also terminating those potential funds, which arguably District 67 could claim is still due and owing to it.
So there's a motion on the floor right now to end the obligation of the residents to continue paying into the SSAs.
Correct, but that's just first reading, so it's not a final action, it's merely to poise it for a future consideration.
But aren't those conditioned upon the payment of money to District 67? For relinquishing their interest in the outline?
The resolution takes care of that. The reason why we stage this as a resolution with the first reading only is so that if there were not an agreement as to the termination, we would not have taken that final action on the SSAs.
Okay.
Do we have legal obligation to pay the school district? If we terminate the SSAs, are we obligated to pay the school district?
That's an issue that may still need to be resolved. I don't want to be coy. I'm just saying that we have established those SSAs. The district has acted presumably in reliance on it pursuant to a contract, and those are matters that the school district may see it differently than the city does.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Biddy, could I ask for a vote, please? Roll call.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Beidler.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Nay.
Alderman Pandeleon.
Aye.
Alderman Tack.
Aye.
Alderman Reisenberg.
Aye.
Alderman Edelman.
Nay.
Alderman Moreno.
Aye.
6 yea, 2 nay, motion carries.
Thank you, Biddy, very much. Next item on the agenda actually is a matter under Property and Public Lands Committee regarding the site at Western and Laurel, the former MS site. We are going to postpone discussion of that matter this evening, and more than likely will be brought before the council at its next meeting on December 1st. Next item on the agenda, opportunity for citizens to address the city council on non-agenda items. Anyone care to address the council on a non-agenda item? Come on up. State your name and your address, please.
Hi, David Mattoon, 1547 North Sheridan Road, and thank you for this opportunity. These are some follow-up ideas to the council's questions on railroad safety at the October 20 council meeting. To ensure that I stay under my 3 minutes, I'm reading these. Lake Forest citation under a local ordinance. Norm Carlson suggested that community service was better than a fine for railroad trespassing violations. Alderman Moore suggested that Lake Forest penalties should be more severe than state law, which, by the way, is $250 or 25 hours of community service for the first offense. If extra officers are needed at a special event, the Lake Forest Special Events Permits quotes a rate of $80 per officer per hour. Therefore, a local ordinance that has both a fine and community service could finance additional voluntary overtime for an officer to do enforcement if desired and needed. This double penalty then satisfies the suggestions of both Norm and Alderman Moore. There are time hotspots where several trains come in at less than 10-minute intervals, so a half-hour enforcement at alternate stations and random times and days could be more effective than having an officer at one station for several hours. Reverse commuter education. Norm mentioned using the dialogue to reach Lake Forest residents. You need to also reach the reverse commuters and their employers. Both the reverse commuters streaming across the tracks to commuter shuttles and those crossing the tracks to local employers while the signals are active. Fort Sheridan Station has a yellow and black sign at the crossing. Highwood tickets railroad warnings device violators, citing the $250 fine and state law. Similar signs should be posted for the new Lake Forest ordinance. This educates both residents and reverse commuters. This also provides the photo op, making local media coverage more likely for a new ordinance. And media coverage was desired by Alderman Moore. For the video record, the safety blitz Norm spoke about was held November 6th from 4:31 to 8:33 in the morning. Trained safety blitzers were grateful for the city police departments and Norm Carlson's participation. The blitzers were from Union Pacific, Metra, DuPage Railroad Safety Council, and Operation Lifesaver. See tracks, think trains, look, listen, and live. Along the right-of-way, stay off, stay away, and stay alive. Thank you for your time, and I guess I'm donating my 15 seconds back to the council.
Thank you, sir, very much. Anyone else from the public? Seeing none, we'll move on. The next item on the agenda, items for omnibus vote consideration. We have two this evening. As is standard practice, if any council member would like to take them individually, we'll do so. Otherwise, I'll ask for a motion to approve them in their entirety. Item number one, approval of the November 3, 2014 City Council meeting minutes. And item number two, approval of health insurance contract renewals. Anyone take these individually? If not, I'll ask for a motion to approve the omnibus.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please, Biddy.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Beidler.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Pandeleon.
Aye.
Alderman Tack.
Aye.
Alderman Reisenberg.
Aye.
Alderman Edelman.
Aye as to the second. I wasn't present at the meeting to approve the minutes.
Alderman Moreno.
Aye.
8 yeas, 0 nay, motion carries.
Thank you, Biddy, very much. Item number 6, ordinances, consideration of a recommendation from the Plan Commission in support of amendments to Chapter 46, Sections 37 and 38, single-family residence districts to permit granny flats or secondary living units on property zoned for single-family use under certain conditions. This is a final approval presented by Kathy Cerniak, Director of Community Development.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This matter is back before you. At your meeting earlier this month, you did hear a recommendation from the Plan Commission. I will quickly repeat some of the information that I presented at the last meeting. I will note that since you received your packet, you do have another ordinance in front of you. The changes from the ordinance in your packet and the ordinance in front of you are wordsmithing changes to really better conform the exact language in the code to the existing zoning ordinance, and those were suggested by the city attorney. Granny flats is the whole notion of allowing a secondary living unit on a property zoned for single-family use. This discussion began almost a couple of years ago now. It was raised as part of a strategic planning session. There was a community engagement forum hosted by Alderman David Moore. Plan Commission held a work session and then held a public hearing that spanned, I believe, 2 meetings, and they responded to some testimony they heard from people who potentially were neighbors to granny flats and from people who potentially would be owners of granny flats, and also some comments from realtors in support of the concept. Community benefits, this wasn't kind of a single issue idea. It really was an idea that was thought to be a way that the city could increase the diversity in housing products, to support preservation of some of these historic units, to encourage investment in some of our larger properties, and ways to enhance the use and perhaps attract buyers to some of the properties that are very unique in the community. The recommendation from the Plan Commission really focuses these units on the larger lot zoning districts, the R4 district, the light yellow, and the R5 district, kind of this greenish yellow. These units would not be allowed in our smaller neighborhoods, smaller lot districts, near the high school, near the college, surrounding the central business district, in the Villa Turicum area, in the Whispering Oaks area, but in the larger lot districts is where this would first be essentially tried out. In summary, the recommendation from the Plan Commission, they felt that requiring the property owner to live on the site was really key to making this work, making this different than a situation where someone owns a single-family house and simply rents it out. Having an owner on site, living on the same property as the renters was very important to the Plan Commission. Plan Commission wanted to open the door slowly on this issue. They wanted this to pertain only to existing issues. It's really focused on historic structures, but to assure that this wouldn't trigger a rush of people wanting to come in and build new units, they're recommending, and it's reflected in the ordinance, that the structure needs to be existing as of the day of adoption of the ordinance. The Plan Commission felt that setbacks were important. The ordinance does reflect a requirement for 20-foot setbacks from property lines, recognizing that some of these units could be very close to the property lines and could impact neighboring properties. They did make a requirement for on-site parking and a requirement for annual registration, both as a way to track that, in fact, the owner is living on the site, but also to allow us to provide information to both our police and fire departments to let them know that there's a secondary living unit on a property. In response to the council's discussion at the last meeting, there are just a couple of substantive changes made to the ordinance. The number of unrelated occupants that would be permitted to live in the secondary unit was reduced from 3 to 2. And a requirement was added that at the time of annual registration, that a site plan needs to be submitted identifying where parking would be provided and requiring that that parking be on a hardscape surface as is required by another section of the code, which is now referenced in this ordinance. And then, as I mentioned, there's various wording changes. Recognizing that the wording changes came to you late, there really is no rush on this ordinance. If you choose to hold off final approval to the December meeting, that certainly doesn't present a problem and is certainly at the council's discretion. That concludes my presentation, and the Plan Commission did recommend approval. With the changes as directed by the council, I think the ordinance is further strengthened, so if you choose to do so, it would be appropriate to grant final reading tonight or in December.
Kathy, I just want to thank you and staff for taking the time to tighten this up a little bit, and I'm, for one, very pleased with the changes that were made. I know they're rather small changes, but they really address any concerns that I had. And I think the wording changes were easily reviewed for me as I sat here, and I think we got the meat of it, certainly in our packet. And I, for one, feel really good about this, and I heartily support this ordinance now.
I was in favor of it before. Now I'm really in favor of it.
Any other questions for Kathy? Anyone from the public like to comment on this? If not, I'd like to see if we have a motion to grant final approval of the ordinance approving a code amendment to permit secondary living units in the R4 and R5 zoning districts under certain conditions and limitations.
So moved.
Have a second? Roll call vote, please, Betty.
Alderman Walden.
Aye.
Alderman Beidler.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Pandeliano.
Aye.
Alderman Tack.
Aye.
Alderman Reisenberg.
Aye.
Alderman Edelman.
Aye.
Alderman Moreno.
Aye.
8 yeas, 0 nay, motion carries.
Great, thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, new business. Any new business tonight to come before the council? A lot of shaking of heads. Next item, additional items for council discussion.
Can I ask one quick wind-up question for me.
You sure it's not a wind-down question?
Yeah. With regard to the issue we were talking about, these special service areas, is there a time constraint on our action? Meaning, do we have to do something before the end of the year in order to ensure that these SSA charges aren't applied for another year?
Good question.
Elizabeth isn't here, but that is my understanding because you have your tax levy ordinance, which will be back at your December 1st meeting for second reading. So you will need to, if you don't act on them, then it will continue for 2015, because that will be the time that that obligation is applied against the taxing body. So between now and December 1st, we'll have to make a decision, do we move forward or not?
And I just wonder, does that change anybody's opinion on this? Because I would hate to see this thing extended accidentally for another year.
Well, I won't be here for the December 1st meeting.
That's good news.
And everyone else voted for it, so.
No.
Mike voted.
Or Mike didn't, yeah.
I've said this a million times, David, we are certainly going to miss you.
Any other items to come before the council? I would remind everyone again, we'll see everyone on the evening of the 28th in Market Square to light the tree, and wish everyone a very happy and safe Thanksgiving, and ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, we're adjourned. Good evening.
Now I'm going to...